So yeah, we had another great session from Nikhil, and we'll be quickly moving on to the next one. So our next speaker is Zachary. Zachary, his topic is something I feel which a lot of us would want to hear and learn from. I personally would want to for sure. His topic is maximizing productivity and managing complexity with Material UI. So to tell you something about Zach, he's an author of a best-selling user interface development course. The name of the course is Implement High Fidelity Designs with Material UI and React.js. He has been coding for his entire life, and he's also extremely passionate about education. His course has taught over 5,000 global students and is listed as #1 recommended paid course on Material UI documentation. That's something absolutely huge. I'm absolutely mind blown by his share introduction. Over to you, Zach. And sorry for making you wait.
No problem for the delay. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll start the presentation. All right. So again, hello everyone, and I'm very excited to be here. So thank you very much to Geegle for having me. Like the moderator said, I have a best-selling course in user interface development on Udemy with a new course over the Jamstack coming soon. So I'm really excited about that. So be sure to follow me on Twitter to find out when that gets released. So let's go ahead and let's dive into how you can transform your React development with Material UI. So why Material UI in the first place? Like, why do we need this tool? Well, I think that most React developers run into a similar set of problems quickly after getting started. You know, you've learned the main concepts of React, like components, props, and state, but there are still some questions when it comes to putting it all together in an actual project. There's so much that goes into a production application that it isn't really feasible to build everything from scratch for every project. That's why we want our React components to be reusable, so we don't have to rebuild them, which would be very tedious. So it also becomes a challenge keeping your styles and functionality consistent throughout your application and across multiple applications. So how do we, manage this? Make sure we're not starting from zero every time and we're maintaining some degree of consistency. Well, what would be great is to start off with a library of components for all of the common elements in web applications. Then you could customize those components to fit the look and feel of your application, giving you more time to focus on actual components and functionality. So that's kind of what Material UI provides to us, along with a lot more. So a component library also gives you mechanisms to ensure consistency by connecting components to a single shared store of styles known as a theme. So everything is sort of running off the same styles and you have all these components to build off of. So it gives you a really great place to start for your projects instead of starting from zero every time. So after you have solutions for styling your components and a set of components to build on, then you need to consistently and predictably arrange those components on the screen. So creating layouts like this can be complicated though, especially when you have really detailed designs. So it's a challenge arranging all of that content on the screen in a consistent way and in a way that's easy to manage. So we need some sort of system to help us do that. Now, once all those pieces are in place, you have to make sure that those styles and your layouts respond correctly to different screen sizes. They need to adapt to the screen size and provide the best experience for your users, no matter what device they're on. So typically, we have to combine multiple solutions for each of these problems to get our project off the ground. But what would be great is to have all of it in one place. And that is precisely what Material UI does. Now, before we dive into Material UI, let's take a look at some other solutions to these problems and just use those to kind of highlight why I think Material UI is the best. So the first one that I'd like to explore, and the first other solution to these problems, is something it's been around for a long time. It's very popular as Bootstrap. So you may or may not have heard Bootstrap, depending on how long you've been doing web development, but it's been around for a while, I think probably before React itself. And it's not React specific, which is something that I think is important. So it wasn't designed for React, but there is a React version of it. So they kind of ported it over and rebuilt the features for React. Now, this means that it actually relies on the main implementation for features. So the main version of Bootstrap, and it isn't as responsive to developments in React. So when a new version of React comes out, it's not as likely, because it's not React specific, that they'll then build React features. So they're not as responsive to developments in the React ecosystem. Bootstrap also has a component library. So it does have a component library, but there's kind of a small number of components. It's not extremely large, and it doesn't cover everything that I think you would need for your project. These components can also be kind of difficult to customize, and it isn't always clear how to override the default styles. That's something that's really important with component libraries. If you're using a set of pre-built components, you need to be able to completely customize those. Now, they do also include a grid component that helps you arrange your content on the screen, and that also helps implement some responsive design. However, it's not a more generalized responsive design system. So you have the responsive design system for your layout, controlling the content on your screen, but outside of that, there's not really a responsive design system to help for more generalized problems. So that's Bootstrap. We'll take a look at another, which is Tailwind, which I believe we just heard a little bit about. Tailwind's a really popular CSS library. It's a great library, and it's used by a lot of people for styling web applications. But it's not a component library, though. So it's kind of a different thing. It's only a styling solution. So that is really helpful, because obviously, we do need to be able to style our components, but that's not really all. It doesn't provide all the building blocks that I would like. It doesn't have the component library and some of the extra features that I'm really looking for a tool like this. Now, because it's a general CSS library and it isn't React specific, and it doesn't have that React variant, again, that just means it won't leverage React whatsoever in terms of features or functionality. So I think that just leaves a little bit to be desired when we're obviously working in React. Okay, so lastly, although there are plenty of other similar libraries that do similar things to all the ones I've described, Semantic Ui is another popular component library. Again, it's not React specific though, but it does have a React variant. So again, they took the original Semantic UI and rebuilt it for React. So I like that, but it doesn't even have its own styling solution. It still relies on the styling solution from the main library. So you don't have all the features. And again, because they're not taking React into account, they're not building it for React, you're just going to miss out on some functionality that would probably help you out otherwise. So like many other component libraries, many people say that customizing the components in this and overriding the default styles is not simple. And I think, again, that's just one of the biggest things that you have to keep in mind when choosing a component library. You have to be able to customize it to your liking. So obviously, what we really like out of our component library are a few things. So first, we want it to be built from the ground up for React specifically. So this is just going to get us so much more functionality and features because it's going to have React at its core. So this could give us really valuable features such as custom hooks that give us functionality that other libraries wouldn't be able to provide without a React specific version. So then when new React features are released, the library can then be updated with new APIs that enable more powerful or efficient workflows. That's something that other libraries that aren't really designed for React probably won't be able to do as well. Second, we also want more than just a component library with all the features we just described before, like a solution for styling our components, adding responsive design, and creating our layouts. So Material UI does all of this and more. So Material UI has completely changed my React development. It's completely changed the way I think about it, the way I work in applications, and has really given me a complete mental structure to use as I'm scaffolding out and building applications. It really gives me a solid guide to where I always, know the next step and have the pieces that I need to keep working. So it features a wide selection of components with powerful functionality, easy customization, and excellent explicit documentation, which is really important. It also has a great ecosystem with easy integration into popular systems like Next.js or Gatsby for even better performance, and it helps reduce boilerplate. Material UI was built explicitly for React, so it's taking advantage of React features at its core. It's not just a React port of an existing library that might have design decisions that either don't take React into, or that don't take advantage of React, or they might actively even work against it, which the port library, the React version, then has to work around. So best of all, Material UI is actively developed and maintained by a great team with an active and supportive community. So Material UI truly provides a solution for all of our problems in one cohesive and integrated system. So let's go ahead and explore how. So the component library. There are tons of Material UI components to help you get started on any interface. You then combine their components from the component library with your own custom components to create your projects. Some examples of their components are things like buttons, sliders, text fields, and here we can see many different text fields. So we have the we can set a text field as required, we can disable it, we can have validation with error styles, and we also have the two text fields on the bottom there with icons. So either a little user icon at the beginning of the text field or the show/hide password icon at the end of the text field. So their text field component has all that functionality baked into it for you. So it's a really great place to start. We also have drawers. So this is the little pop-out window from the side here. It's very helpful. We have loading indicators. So you can see at the bottom there, we have the spinner. So you can either set it to automatically just spin for as long as it's on the screen, or you can actually control the rate, you can control the progress and manually increment it. We also have badges. So the badge is the little notification icon there. So we can add notifications to different icons or elements in our application easily. We also have a data grid component, and this is for managing tabular data and displaying data like this to our users with built-in filtering, sorting, and pagination. So a lot of functionality baked into this one component. So again, it just really speeds up your development. It's a great place to start. Now, just like regular React components, you can customize Material UI components using props. So one of the most common props that you'll find is the variant prop. Now, the variant prop allows you to select different styles of a component. So for example, here, you can use it to get a filled in, outlined, or plain text button. So you can see at the top here, we have the actual output, so the buttons across the top. And then in the code here, we are rendering different button components. So the first button has no variant, it's just the default, so we get just a plain text. And then the next button has a variant of contained. So that gives us that filled in look. Then the variant of outlined, of course, gives us the outlined look. And then we can also use other props like the disabled prop to disable the button as seen here. So now that we've seen the buttons, we also have the typography. So a typography component is used for all of our text styles. And again, here we just pass the variant prop and then select the variant we'd like. So on the left, we see these different text styles at H1, H2, H3, and so on. And on the right, we see our typography components where we select the variant that we want, and those text styles are then applied automatically. So that is how we can use different props to customize the functionality of our Material UI components. And most importantly, the Material UI components all have excellent documentation for all of the available props for each component, along with a description of its functionality and the default value. So we can see here for the typography component, we have the name of all the props. So this is just a piece of them, but we have a line, the children prop, classes prop, and then it gives us the type, so examples of it, the default value, and then a description of what that prop does. So with a library like Material UI, where you have such a vast component library with so many different pieces, it's really important to have great documentation so you can always go in and figure out exactly what's going on in your applications. So, all right. One of the most important aspects of a component library is flexibility. You don't want to be locked into the default styles, which is why Material UI has a clear and explicit system for customizing the components with your own styles. So again, like I mentioned before, when using a component library, you don't want to be locked into whatever the defaults are. You have to be able to completely customize everything. Like, it's always good, you need something to start with, but if there are parts that you don't like, you have to easily be able to change that. And so Material UI has done a great job making sure that that's the case. So there are multiple different options for styling your components and customizing them based on different scenarios that you might encounter. So we'll explore each of these throughout the talk, but we'll just briefly review them for now so that we can kind of get the idea in our heads. So the first option is a specific variation for a one-time situation when you just need one instance of a style. So just a quick one-off when you need to add a style. So then there's a dynamic variation. A dynamic variation for a one-time instance of a conditional style. So this still is just you need it one time, but the style is now conditional. So you could say if X, then be the color blue, or if Y, be the color green. So that's a conditional style. There's also reusable specific variations. So this is when you need to reuse the same styles in multiple locations. So if I have a button that I want, say I want it purple polka dots, and I want to reuse that button throughout the application, there's a reusable way for us to do that so we don't have to keep copying over those styles. Now, finally, you could also use a global theme variation, which is when you want to apply styles to every instance of a component across your entire application. So say the button in Material UI has a hover effect that you don't like, and you want to remove it for every button across your project, you can do that using the theme overrides. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, Material UI components are also composable, which is a really powerful feature. This means that you can easily transfer styles and functionality from one component to another using the component prop. Okay, so the most common usage for this is turning a button or any other component into a link. This transfers the functionality of your link component for navigation into whatever component you pass it to. Any props not used by the main component will then just be passed down to the composed component. So here in this example, we have a button component and we pass the component prop equals link. So that's saying we want to take the functionality of the link component and put that into our button component. So then typically the to prop, so to/contact, that is usually just for your link components. But here, since we're composing a button and a link, we just put the to prop on our button. And since the button doesn't need the to prop, it ignores it and passes it down to the link component. And then the functionality works as expected. All right, so that's how you can compose components, and that enables a lot of really powerful functionality for combining things in different ways. So now let's explore Material UI's styling solution. So Material UI uses JSS or CSS in JS as the styling solution to bring the full power of JavaScript into our component styles. This means we're creating our classes right inside of our components, although you can move the styles externally if you wish. Personally, I like to have all of the styles and functionality for each component totally encapsulated in just one place, so having it all in the one component file. I think that's really clear. It's helpful having everything in one place, so you don't have to have different style files in other places and have to hunt around for where everything is. So this also enables really powerful functionality and flexibility, like generating dynamic styles based on the state of your application. So that's really powerful, and we'll explore that more in just a second. But here is our basic component, and we of course import React. We would have needed to import the button component, and then we import make styles from Material UI. We then create a constant of use styles, set it equal to make styles called, and then inside of there, we can pass it an arrow function that will receive our theme. We'll talk more about the theme in just a minute, but we then return from make styles an object, and that object has all of the classes that we want for our components. So previously, all your CSS classes that were in an external file, now you then create those CSS classes here in this style object. Then inside your component, so inside of our component my button here, you create the const classes equal to use styles. That sets up all of the styles that you created, and it generates the actual CSS. And then we can create our button component and pass it the classes.button class that we just created up above. So that is how we create our classes in our component and then tie it to the components that we want to style with those classes. All right. Now, Material UI components, they use the prop classes to allow you to overwrite any of the default component styles with your own custom classes. You can even only apply certain classes when the component is in a certain state, such as being disabled. Now, they also provide complete documentation on all the classes that each component has available for you to overwrite. That's under the component API section of the documentation. So that gives you all the overwrites that you might need for customizing your components. Then, of course, for regular JSX elements, we just use the class name prop as we've normally been doing. And then we pass the class from the JSS class that we created. So in this example, we can see here the button component has two classes being applied. To the root of the button, which is just the button tag itself, just the base button tag, we'll get the classes.logo container class, but then we pass disabled. So that class, the classes.logo disabled, will only be applied if that button has the disabled prop of true. So you can see how they give us the really powerful ability to apply certain styles, not just to the component, but also to the component in certain states. So that really enables some powerful functionality and flexibility with our styles. Now we also see the span tag here, and that, of course, as a regular JSX element, just uses the class name prop instead of classes. All right. So dynamic styles is probably the most powerful feature of using JSS like this. So we're able to dynamically generate our styles based on the application state and props. So we can easily pass whatever data we'd like into our styles and then use that data within complete functions inside of our classes to determine the component styles. Leveraging this feature, we can make our components extremely flexible and reusable for many different cases. We can see in the example here, the component quantity button. Okay, and we're passing that quantity button the props white and round. We then take those props, white and round, and pass them to an object inside of our const classes equals use styles. So we pass the props into use styles, and then up in our style object inside of make styles, we can then destructure those props that we passed. As you can see, for the background color property, we set it to a function where we destructure out the white property and then check if white is set to true, then we use the background color white. Otherwise, we use the background color of black. Same for the border radius. We set it as an arrow function and destructure out the prop round. And if round is set to true, we'll use a border radius of 50 pixels, otherwise 0. So this is really powerful and enables such flexible components because we can completely alter the styles of our component based on props. So it's really powerful and such a simple system for us to be able to do that. Now, sometimes you'll want to reuse your components throughout your application with the same style. So for example, like a button, that we want a certain styled button that we're going to use multiple times throughout the application. Now, we of course don't want to just copy those styles over and over. So what we'd really like to do is we can create a new copy of that component, which automatically has our desired styles applied. So in this case, we create a const of styled button equal to, and we have a styled function from Material UI, where we can then pass that, the component we want to style, and then call the result of that function and pass an object inside. So that's that second set of parentheses after the styled button, and then with the object inside of there, pass the styles that we want to apply. Now we can just use that styled button and all those styles will be applied automatically. So you could imagine in other parts of the application, we could then just import that styled button and we'd see those styles without having to copy over the styles every time. So we just have to import that style component and use it as usual. So a lot of really powerful functionality when it comes to styling your components in Material UI. Now, extending the power of the styling solution is the theming solution. Now, Material UI provides a default theme for the application, which we can then customize, overwrite, and extend. The default theme is a collection of styles and utilities that you can use throughout your entire application. So everywhere in your application connects to the one theme. The default theme is a collection of styles and utilities that you can use throughout your entire application. And some of these include a collection of drop shadows arranged from lightest to darkest. So you have an easy selection of shadows. They have colors for common events like success, error, warning, and information. So you can have consistent coloring. And there's also a function for calculating consistent spacing and even more. That's all inside of the default theme. Now, your primary use for the theme is consolidating commonly used styles in one centralized location instead of having them spread out randomly throughout your entire application. This way you have everything in one convenient place. You don't have to go hunting around looking for different styles. And you can access the theme from your component classes, making it an excellent repository for all your styles. So the classes that we've shown before, we can access the theme inside of those classes and just reference the one central place. And that way, all of our styles will just be referencing the theme and we won't have everything distributed throughout the project. So the theme is broken into a couple different sections. So the typography section of the theme is used for centralizing all of your text styles. So they break down the text for each of your H tags, like H1, H2, and so on, and also give some other options like body 1, body 2, subtitle 1, subtitle 2, or caption for different text styles that you may have in the application. This makes it so simple to maintain consistency throughout your application using an explicit hierarchical text system. So as you're coding, you just have to use the typography component and specify which variant you'd like to have those styles automatically applied. So you can see here, we're using the create MUI theme from Material UI to create and customize our theme. And we're passing inside of the theme object a typography section. That typography property itself holds an object. And here we have H1, H2, and all the other H tags. And we can specify the text styles that we want applied for that variant. Then in our code on the left here, you can see we just import the Material UI typography component and then use the variant prop to specify which variant from our theme we'd like to have applied to the text inside. So here we've selected a variant of H1, so our H1 styles will then be applied to the text hello world. So this is a really powerful system. So you have this very clear system of your H1, H2, H3. So it's organized. You can make sure that H1 is your largest, down to H6 being the smallest. And so as you're coding, you don't really have to think about your design. You just have to remember what it is in your theme, and you're not having to recreate these every time or make sure that you're using 4.5 rem in every single place. Maybe one place you mess up, you only do 4. No, with this, you'll have everything just referencing the one place, making it extremely consistent and maintainable. So then there's the palette section of the theme. And this is used for centralizing all of the colors in your application. Now you have a few different options for setting colors in the palette. So first is your primary and secondary colors. And these are special colors. So here we can see on the right, the palette and then the primary and secondary. And each of those has a main color inside of it. Now the primary and secondary colors should be the main and the accent colors for your brand. So whatever your main brand colors are, those should be the primary and secondary colors in your theme. Now, because these features, these colors, the primary and secondary colors, they have a unique feature where you set just the primary.main and then the secondary.main, and Material UI will actually automatically generate a lighter and darker version of those colors for you. So here you see I set the theme.palette.primary.main to our green color, but it also now generates a theme.palette.primary.light and a palette.primary.dark. So if I just need a lighter version of a color to highlight it somewhere, or a darker color to maybe disable it and color it out, well, then you could use those automatically generated colors to get those variants. So now we can see on the left where we're actually using our classes, creating our style object. We have the class drawer, and we're setting the background color to the theme.palette.primary.main. So you're not having to reference and copy over the same color every time. You just reference it inside of the theme. And this enables a lot of really powerful functionality. So then besides the primary and secondary colors, you have the common object. And that is used to hold all the other colors in your application. So you can see here, the common, we just have the tan and red colors. So again, that way we don't have the same color code all over the application that maybe if we want to go and make a change later, now we have to hunt each of those down. No, here we just reference it from the theme. And now if we wanted to change this red, maybe to say a darker red, we could just change that one constant of red in the theme, and then that will now be reflected everywhere in the application because they're all referencing just that one spot. So the theme has a direct impact on the components in the component library. So your primary and secondary colors that you set in the theme palette will be used as the main two colors for all the components from Material UI. So whenever you then import those components, they'll automatically have those styles applied, eliminating one step towards customization. So we can see here at the top, we have the output, the buttons, primary and secondary, and we have two switches. And we see in the code that we can pass a color prop, it can set the color to primary or secondary, or the switch actually just has that secondary color applied by default. So as soon as you import the component, it's going to have those colors applied that you set in the theme. So that automatically enables just one extra level of customization, kind of speeding up your workflow for you. The theme also provides a section for overrides. So this is where you can specify application-wide styles that will override the defaults for every instance of a given Material UI component. So in this example, we set the overrides for the MUI chip component, which is just a little display icon basically. And here we want every single chip in the entire application. Every time we import the chip component and use it, we're setting the background color on the root of the chip, and then we're changing these text styles for the label. So this will then be applied to every single instance of that component throughout the application. So it's a really nice way, a nice place for us to add our overrides. So now if you need to make changes to the fonts, colors, sizes, or any of these other styles, you just have to change the theme and you'll see it reflected in every instance throughout the application. This is exceptionally maintainable. If you ever want to try out new styles in the future, you can easily adjust the theme instead of hunting down each individual usage. You could even save multiple themes for different events like holidays or promotions that go on within the company, and then you could use that to easily reskin the entire application at once. So now we have our components, we know how to style them, and we can consolidate our commonly used styles in the theme. Now we need some way of arranging those components on the screen in a consistent manner. So Material UI provides a grid component for arranging our content. It's essentially an abstraction of Flexbox and provides a straightforward system for managing our layouts. This system is built on a 12-column layout like many other grid systems. So there are grid items and there are grid containers. The grid items are the actual components or content. So that's what you're actually wanting to display on the screen. And then the containers simply hold those items. Okay, then we can use different props to align those items within their respective containers. And we can assign the number of columns that an item should span to determine its size. Containers can also be items of other containers. And so by combining these item containers and changing their distribution and their direction, we can create interfaces of arbitrary complexity. So we can create basically anything we can imagine by combining this grid system in this way. So I want to take a break real quick to show off a demo of this grid system, just because Material UI documentation has a great example for how this works that I think illustrates it very well. So let's flip over to Material UI documentation.
Sorry,
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt you, Zach. You have a couple of minutes left.
Couple of minutes left?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so here's a demo of the grid system in Material UI. We'll just go through this quickly then, since we're running out of time. But each of these boxes here, each of these cells is an item inside of this overall space here, which is our grid container. So these are all items inside of this container. Now, first we set a direction. So the default direction is a direction of row, which would be horizontally. So we have the cells laid out horizontally from left to right. Now, then you have the justify and align items props to change the alignment of those items within their container. So we have the justify prop, which modifies the main axis. This is a common misconception, or at least something that I struggled with at first. I thought that the justify prop always controlled either up or down, and then align items always controlled left and right, but that's not the case. So justify, it affects the main axis. So for a direction of row, the main axis is horizontal. So if we want to align these items to the left horizontally, we'd set a justify of flex start. If we want them at the right, we'd set a justify of flex end. I'll go ahead and center those back up. Now, if we want to move them up vertically, if we're in a direction of row, then we would use align items, because align items uses the cross axis, so the opposite of the main one. So if we're in a default direction of row, the cross axis would be the vertical axis. So if we want to move them up, we can use flex start, and down flex end. So basically, by combining the different alignments and setting the direction from either row or column, we can create any layouts that we can imagine. And for an example here, you can see that combining this allows us to create a complicated layout with many different elements. And combining these all in many pieces is how we create our entire application. All right, let's go back and finish this up. So responsive design, we'll move quickly through this, but responsive design is integrated in Material UI to ensure that our styles and layouts look perfect on any screen size. So Material UI essentially provides these breakpoints. So extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large that represent different pixel sizes for your screen size. So then they have media queries that we can call that are stored in the theme to check if we are currently at one of the given screen sizes. So they have the different media queries in the theme.breakpoints.down or theme.breakpoints.up. So if I wanted to check if the current screen size is at or below the medium breakpoint, we could use our theme.breakpoints.down for medium. And same for small, or if we want in between a certain range or any of these ranges, this allows us to accurately detect the screen size, and then we can use that screen size to make changes in our code. So here in the classes, we can see where we're creating our style object. Here we have a class of container, and we're setting a margin bottom of 8 rem. That is going to be applied for all screen sizes by default. But then you see that we call our theme.breakpoints.down and pass in the medium key. And so now the styles inside of there will only be applied to screen sizes that either match that they are at or below medium. Then we can do .down for small. So now we'll only set a margin top of 2 rem for small and below, and then a margin top of 1 rem for extra small. So by creating our breakpoints like this and setting up conditional styles for different breakpoints, we can completely change the look of our application and optimize it for mobile users. So the responsive design system is not just integrated with our classes, but it's also integrated with the grid system. So we can specify that items should take up a certain width at different screen sizes. So in these examples here, we can set the items to take up 100% of the screen size. So that would be 12 columns, or we could say just 6 columns, but only at small breakpoint and up. And then at the extra small, then it should take up 12. So we can see the second line of boxes here on the first screenshot. They are just 2 of them sitting side by side. But then in the smaller screenshot, when we're on a extra small screen, the extra small of 12 kicks in. And now instead of sharing the line, they're both taking up the full width across. So we can specify the number of columns for each of our items and use that to, again, adapt the layout based on screen size. So we can adjust our classes, we can adjust our layout, we can even adjust our content based on responsive design. So Material UI provides a use media query hook, which you can see here. We pass in our theme.breakpoints.down, and that will return a Boolean for whether or not we match that current screen size. So here I create a constant matches MD. So if we are at or below the medium breakpoint, and then we could define, say, our tabs for our desktop website and a drawer for our mobile links for our mobile website. And then we can check if matches medium is true, render the drawer for our mobile site. Otherwise, if we're not at a medium breakpoint, then just use the tabs because we must be on a desktop size. So we can change our classes, our grid layouts, and our content itself. So to wrap up, the influence Material UI can have on your productivity and workflow is just unbelievable. It will completely change the way that you work in React. There's going to be a lot less boilerplate, and you'll be able to prototype faster because you have all these components to start working with. And so you can just import them and really easily build out interfaces to test concepts before you have to do all the hard work of building it out to a production design. You can just throw things together with the default components and get the concepts working. So much faster prototyping and iteration. So Material UI really does provide a one-stop solution for everything that we need in our application. It provides the component library, our styling system, a theme system, layout, and responsive design to make sure that all of those look perfect on every screen size. Now, normally we would have to have a bunch of different solutions, all isolated, independent solutions that we put into our project, and then we'd have to figure out ourselves how to make them all work together. But Material UI provides everything we need in one package. And so each of the systems inside of it can all talk to each other intelligently. So we don't have to coordinate that ourselves, and it just gives us everything that we need. So lastly, one of the best benefits that I think you can use Material UI for is before you even start coding, take the design file of the project you're about to build and go through and convert the design file into your Material UI theme. So get all your text styles in your variants for your typography, all your colors into the palette section. And then when you go working and building your application, you won't even have to think about the design. You'll just be able to reference the theme. And that will really speed up your process and just streamline your entire workflow. So I really think using Material UI to its full potential will significantly streamline your development and provide you with an explicit, scalable, maintainable foundation for all your future projects. I think you should definitely try it out today. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for Geekle for having me here.
Thanks a lot, Zach. That was a brilliant session without a doubt.